research.
Yes.
Come in.
Oh. So I got held up in Nottingham.
Sorry about walking in on the film.
Sorry. We're trying to pretend they're not there.
Yeah. Okay, I'm Deborah.
Hello, I'm
Hi.
Sally, finally.
Hi Sally, it's lovely to see
Thank
you.
you, it's nice to be here.
Yeah.
I'm Tessa.
Hello, I'm Sally.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
I'm Claire.
Oh, lovely, fantastic.
We're just kind of having a discussion really.
Oh.
These two have been before.
Yeah.
Tessa came the first week and Sally was here last week. We're just kind of having some discussion really about midwifery. We're just kind of looking at what it feels like really to be a midwife and the kind of things that you experience on a regular basis professionally and what you make of that.
When I had my first baby, I'm just thinking about how we're perceived. You know, if you say you're a nurse or a doctor or something or a teacher, you go, oh, that's very good, you know. But when I went to the group with the toddlers, you know, people, you know, just starting up conversations, say, oh, what do you do? And I say, I'm a midwife. And very quickly I stopped saying I was a midwife because it was like, are you? You know, and they had not been on a good receiving end of things. Oh yeah, and that I was really shocked because I just thought, oh, that'll be a good thing to start a conversation with someone you don't know. I mean, I didn't say it on purpose, but normally you'd sort of expect
a relationship,
it.
with someone.
But no, they were definitely not impressed by their
experience.
Not at all.
Disappointment and anger. And I mean, one of the things about doing this research is we're actually kind of finding ways in which what you say may actually come out in the images. So I guess there are two strands to it. The main sort of question is, how can we elicit a narrative through making images? And I mean, so far the images have been beautiful and you know, really quite eloquent. I mean, I don't know if you want to, either of you, talk about the images at all that you've made so far. That's yours in there.
Is it? Oh, that's my little woman. There we go. I forgot about this.
Is the yellow one the woman?
Yeah, hang on a minute.
She's got all glittery.
That's good. That's
And her bed's got a bit squashed, unfortunately.
Yeah, she was standing. She was upright. I think this was about in the labour room, that hopefully she's at the centre, and ideally, as a midwife, I'd like to be, you know, in the corner, not interfering too much, but being, I think that was a brick.
Yeah.
Being like solid, confident, say, you know, hopefully making it feel safe. But then there's this very big presence of the medical side of everything, which I have to have an awareness of as a midwife. But it's that whole thing of midwifery being a science and an art. And I'm just still figuring out, and probably maybe till the day I retire, we'll be figuring out how for it to be balanced.
Would you like it to be less medical?
Yeah, because I think, because there's always a place for it, because it's, you know, it's saved women's lives. Also, it's amazing what I see happen in the hospital. It's incredible when you see it really kicking in, and you know, she really needs that medical help and intervention, and it absolutely saves her and the baby's life. So you want that there, of course you do, because it's incredible, but it needs to be just coming in when it's really necessary, rather than it being what dominates and what guides what happens. Do you know what I mean? Which it often feels like it is.
I have to say, at work, I love it, and I'm always very happy, and I really, really love it. I love talking to the women, and you just feel on a high all the time. But I think there's an underlying anxiety. And as I was saying last week, you may be fine, but you're aware that there's something gone off with someone else. There's been an incident, you know that will have knocked the stuffing out of them. But it's that sort of feeling of, I've got to be careful.
Like an underlying anxiety.
Definitely, all the
Yeah.
time.
We're trained to know about every potential eventuality, so you can't unknow that. Because you need to be able to recognise, obviously, when it's not going so well, things. And probably, for me, it's just really heightened because I'm being taught new things all the time about, and I've just done like an exam of, emergencies yesterday. Depends what's prominent in your mind. Really.
Yeah.
But
And it sort of
hopefully after
strikes me.
some years of experience.
It strikes me what you're saying is that in a way the emergencies, the potential for the trauma, sort of colours everything else.
Can do if you're not
So
careful, I think.
statistically the normality's sort of this big and the traumas are this big, but sort of psychologically the traumas are this big and the normal stuff's
Yeah,
this
that's
big.
a really good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
And it seems very busy at the moment as well. Generally, over the last few years, the
Yeah.
pace of work, the amount of mums that we see seems to have increased a lot. And you have to find ways of trying to manage increasing numbers of people with the same resources that you had before when there weren't so many. So it just means you spread a bit more between more people, or, if a piece of equipment breaks, you've got 5 women to care for with that piece of equipment, and if you've instead of 2 pieces of equipment. So, things don't always flow as smoothly as you would like.
No.
And you have to prioritise where you're spending your time. So, I think that the bit that loses out, I think, is the midwifery bit.
Right.
I feel for me,
Definitely.
I can't sit there and I don't feel I can be with women because I'm doing midwifery. Yeah, it's hard because there's so much pressure of time. You can run from one thing to another, and you can do blood pressure checks and you can do pulse checks and you can run up and down the ward and do all of that, but that's not the same thing. That's like doing midwifery.
Yeah.
Being a midwife is about connecting with the person while you're carrying out physical care, because that physical care is a person on the end of that who has
It's an opportunity
fear,
to
thoughts.
connect.
Exactly, and that I think is what is important in midwifery for me anyway. And you don't, circumstances don't always allow you to develop that as fully as you like.
What is the feeling that kind of goes with that? That, if you're kind of having to run from one person to another and not being able to spend the time that you want to with someone, what does that leave you with?
Guilt.
Okay, right.
Guilt. I feel guilty. The worst one for me, one of the worst ones, is breastfeeding support. Oh, sometimes you see women, she's had a cesarean section, she's got drips, so they're exhausted, and they've had a birth experience that they didn't plan for, and they've been frightened and tired, and then they want to breastfeed because they believe it's the best thing for their baby, because it is, but at the same time they feel under pressure that if they don't breastfeeding, then they're a bad mum, or then they feel guilty.
We've just got a couple of minutes. I mean, if you do want to say something about your images, then, very briefly, before we finish.
I'm intrigued about your guys. Your
Oh, well, this is me trying to represent myself as the highest I could be, and how can I try to create that energy in the room. Usually when people coming in for anything planned, they tend to look like this. Actually, they need you and they're looking more like this.
That's amazing.
He will come in and man like to feel very in control, and the man, and try to protect his partner. But when she's in birth, it's a big mess. It's all news. It's all newsworthy. But he can't do anything. A lot of men feel very helpless, and lots of things are hitting him at the same time, but he can't see who's hitting him, or he doesn't know how, he can't react because this is all happening, but it's just a complete mess, and there's a tangle, and there's no way out of that situation that they can see. So I try to just come back to being this, because I might not be able to change that, but I can change this. So that's the best I can do, and if that's all I can do, I want to do it as best I can. And I don't know whether everybody feels the same about midwifery. This is kind of supposed to be a big love heart. You can't really see it on here, and there's one heart there, but I'm trying to make it big enough to go over everything.
So far, we've had 3 midwives and a hypnobirther. The midwives as a whole seem to be thinking, in the main, about the birthing mother and their responsibilities, which seem to weigh quite heavily. That looks really uncomfortable. Yeah, the face mask that's cling filmed.
That was representing that what you want to do as a midwife is sometimes constrained by policies or sometimes people's perceptions. You've always got that fear of litigation at the back of your head. So you might not be sort of like doing the care that you necessarily want to do because of the temporal pressures with your job, and also because you're doing things just as a precautionary measure to obviously avoid litigation, when actually like it's better to just let things go with the flow, I suppose. The sunshine next to it represents the joy and happiness that it brings to me seeing women give birth. The bottom right represents the fuzziness sometimes that's going on in your head because of the temporal pressures. You're being asked to cover your own caseload and cover other people's caseloads. Like I say, I think the majority of midwives would say that they can't practice in a fashion that they would want to practice because of time constraints or because of litigation and kind of guidelines and things, which is a shame. But you work around that like you do with any job. You have to be flexible, and there's ways that you get around it or just do the best that you can, really.
How did you feel about being pregnant yourself after being a midwife? Must have been quite odd if you've seen so
I really
many
enjoyed
births.
the pregnancy, yeah. Like I say, it definitely adds new insight. So when women used to come and say things like, oh, I've been suffering with terrible heartburn, like probably before having children, it'd be like, oh dear, sorry about that. Now I'm like, oh my God, yes, it's terrible, isn't it?
Were you a hugged baby?
Oh, you're smothered to death, aren't you?
So is there evidence that, you know, like a home birth, it's got less intervention and stuff like that?
Yeah, sometimes at hospital, I think we've got in such a culture of intervention and medicalisation that we will intervene just because it's better to feel that we're actually doing something than doing nothing, when actually birth will prosper better just leaving it well alone, really, and letting nature take its course. So if everything's going straight forward, why are we intervening with things saying, well, shall we break your waters just to speed things up when everything's progressing normally, kind of thing?
Other people have said that in these sessions, that once a woman's in hospital, there is an expectation that it will become a medical thing.
Yeah, there's all the kind of having to bed blocking, I suppose, as well, and the expectation of management and things.
Bed blocking. Basically people in bed.
Yeah, that women every day will want to give birth, and if there's a woman that's taken longer than what the protocol says, then technically she's taking up a bed that the woman tomorrow is going to need. The best place to give birth is where you feel most comfortable, and invariably your own home is going to be more comfortable than hospital. So yeah, I think home births are lovely. You can eat and drink when you want, have however many visitors you want.
Yeah, and you can have lots of hugs from your family as well.
Hugs before drugs.
Oh, nice one.
Yeah. I had 3 natural births, and one was at home, which I didn't have a midwife. It was just an old lady who was just looking after me with my mother-in-law.
Yeah.
So she just came and just sat, in the bed and just held me, and she told me to push. And then it was just born, 3 hours.
Oh, gosh.
And it was lovely, and it was home, so everybody came to congratulate me. All the family was there, and it was a good feeling.
Yeah.
And there was no doctors, no midwives, no one, no painkillers, nothing.
Yeah.
I think you never forget your birth experience. It'll always stay with you.
We got so far away from, you in a community with people outside, who come in and see the baby, and you, whether or not those women are skilled, like in our terms, they were, weren't they? Because you were absolutely comfortable, presumably, on your first birth. And we've got so far away from that, a home birth here is like, wow, 1% of births. I mean, that's tiny, isn't it? Well, usually some are higher, but it's not much higher. And so that's 99 women out of 100 are not at home. Well, that's if the 99 were still having a good experience, that would be another thing. So many of those situations could have been much better.
I think right from the start, the biggest concern has been, as birthing professionals, we don't want to stir up too much emotional content, because it's really important for people who are involved in medical procedures to actually maintain their objective stance in order just to be able to do what needs to be done. And also the kind of sense in which they might not be able to speak openly and freely, or feel able to speak openly and freely about their work, because it's so politically sensitive in so many different ways. So it's just kind of a process for me of making the space available for them to use in whatever way they wanted to use, and bearing all of that in mind.
I had a bit of a week of revelation after doing this art thing. I've never been any good at art in my life, and I've never done anything like this. And yet it was like, oh my God, it was the first time I'd actually been able to put in one go so many different layers of things. And it was like, oh, I can actually do something with it. So it's like I could do with going home and doing a picture. I think in future I'm going to use this as a process. Yeah. I think, it's really... something like this is really useful.
I don't think I ever talk so much about what I think about midwifery to non-midwives. And as midwives, you sort of have a bit of a chat, and then you all dash off in other directions. So unless it's your job to be thinking about things like that, you do just go from day to day and week to week and year to year, and things don't really change. Whereas I was thinking about the trauma and the ongoing background trauma, and then a sort of more acute trauma. And I don't mean to say that we're all traumatised, because we're not, and there's lots and lots of jolly things. But I hadn't really thought about it in that way until someone else says it, because we don't talk about it in those terms. We don't say, gosh, you must have been traumatised this morning. You just mop up the tears or have a bit of a chat, and next week you're supposed to be all right again.
Yeah, and you just go and get on with it, or go and look after you've got other women.
Yeah, you just get on with it.
Mop up and
I think there would be room for a bit of not counselling, but I mean, your supervision and our supervision is clearly not the same.
No.
Our supervision is to make sure that professionally we're up to speed, and if you've got an issue, you can talk about it. But if you went more than a couple of times to your supervisor, she'd then be questioning,
why are you coping with your job? Or something like that.
And there is an undercurrent of, if you don't like the heat in the kitchen, then, you know. And I actually think, this has nothing to do with it really, but it probably has, that my husband and I were talking about people being overtly emotional or not. And we went to a funeral a while ago, just as an example of a policeman. And it was really, really sad, obviously, but he was a young man and it was sad. And the whole place was packed and everybody sat there in their police uniforms because it was very formal. And we were quite formal as well, and because we are used to not letting it all out. And it was just like the whole church was tense because everybody was just used to holding it in, putting up a good front, carrying on. And we were saying that maybe in our own lives, we are not as emotional as maybe other people would be, and maybe a bit intolerant of people who are very emotional because, you know,
Not allowed to,
let's get on with it. We've got another day.
Do you ever notice that, you know, things that happen at work get taken elsewhere, consciously or unconsciously?
Well, I think the two main reasons midwives leave the profession are burnout and being bullied at work. So some people will just do their best and they'll say, well, okay, I can't do everything. Some people can do that. Other people, it becomes intensely personal. I can't manage my workload. And as soon as people start to feel that, other people seem to, not everybody, but I've seen other people jump on the back of that and go, oh, look, she can't manage her workload.
I hope it doesn't sound like all we do is worry about things as well, because not an awful lot of it is just, oops, that hasn't worked, they've all fallen out. It's just fabulously enjoyable, really. It's amazing how sort of close you feel to people, and because it is a real baby and everything's fine, that makes the parents happy, and it's somehow more about what those people feel when they leave. You know, that they feel good about it. Because you can have a baby, but they're absolutely, you know, well, they don't feel positive, and they sometimes feel a bit assaulted, I think, in a funny way, mentally. I'm sure they feel assaulted mentally, some of them. So it's about them feeling positive, and even if things didn't go to plan, that they feel you're on their side, and that you're sort of rooting for them, and they feel positive about it.
So, well, it might be more helpful for you, and certainly interesting, if we maybe go and have a look at the images. Not everybody has managed to be able to come every single week. So, for various reasons, lots of different reasons really, but I think one of the main ones is that people's shift patterns don't work, like you're saying you're having to work next week. So people in the past have come and then maybe not come again, or come again several weeks later. So what I've done is collect all the images that everybody who's ever come has made, including some that I've made thinking about the process of this group as well. So it might be helpful to just go and have a look and catch up in a way. This one is the same woman who's done this one, this one, this one and this one.
All right.
And the woman who's done this series of work is a hypnobirther. She's worked on it over time, thinking about not only the woman and her role, but thinking about lots of other things that go on beyond. And she's kind of thinking about all of that together and trying to encompass it all.
Do you know if this was a midwife or...
Oh, I did that.
You did? Okay. Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
So this presumably could mean the woman in labour. She's supposed to be singing or in pain, and would this be the partner? Or?
Yeah, this was him later on down the line when she's in labour and on labour suite. If I've got more than a couple of women, or if I've got, like, because sometimes you'll have a lady in early labour and a lady that's just delivered, or somebody who's in active labour and somebody else that's in active labour as well, which is I find really hard, because you're doing your obs every 15 minutes, so you're running from, by the time you've done your obs and written them up for one lady, you've got to run next door and do it for them. You write that up and then you're just constantly that. Yeah. And I hate that. I've got 8 women on the antenatal ward and 1 CTG, you know, and if you've got to sit there and hold it on because a baby's very active, that's 9 other women or 8 other women that you're not really sure what's happening. I really hate that, and I hate it because I can't be present for either of them, and I don't feel like I'm doing either job well. I'm furious. I feel seriously. I feel furious. I feel really angry about having to do that because I can't be there all the time.
Started with the pipe cleaners, which I thought represented experiences and thoughts and paths that the women have gone through. So it started with that, and the idea now is that this side will represent midwife. So she's got a totally calm, totally reassuring, just all-encompassing, positive feeling that she's able to influence the whole environment with. That's the sort of impression that I would like to give, because I think if people are relaxed, then everything will happen much more naturally. So on this side, I'm going to put very positive images, like this dad. That's what he's envisaging will happen. And then I've got a sort of heart-shaped couple, and the sort of ideal there. There's a woman using a beanbag, and she's got a heat pad on her back. She's at home with the fireplace, and she's got a cat on her back as well. So I thought that was rather nice to just maybe what people imagine or hope for, or that's the very best that they could get when they're in labour. It's very frustrating when you can't do what you know you need to do for someone, because people only have an opportunity once, twice, a handful of times in their lives to have a good birth. So it's just such a shame if it isn't as good as it could have been. And you can't make it right if it's just been a horrible disappointment or a horrible experience for a couple. You just can't, you can't change that. Might be able to influence how they feel about it, but what's happened has happened.
This is a picture which I drew. It's a celebration of life, and there's like a family gathering and friends and everybody celebrating. But then it's more blurred because I think nowadays a lot of people sort of see it as more of a medical condition, and there's a lot of tension, fear I think it should be celebrated more and make it more special, and it should be a celebration of life. It should be a nice, positive picture, but it is all blurred because we can't see it.
It's really been an eye-opener in a lot of ways, for me anyway. I've never worked with art materials before. It's good to come here to discover that actually there's different ways of doing things, you know, different ways of getting things out that you want to sort of say without having to draw it perfectly as a perfect piece of classical artwork. It's also been really good to try and express some things that I can't put into words either. So it's been really good to find different ways that can come out, and then I feel like I can kind of move on from those things now because I've somehow got it out of my system in a way. I kind of got that it's the last time feeling about today, you know, like I'm really enjoying what I'm doing, but I know I'm not going to be doing it next week, so it feels a little bit like I'm already missing it, even though I'm still here doing it, which just takes something away from actually enjoying doing it. So.
Last session, Deborah?
Pardon?
Last session?
Yep, it is definitely the last session. And it sort of feels really sad. I've just loved seeing what everybody's done, because there's something about artwork that has a person's voice in it, in the same way that writing has a voice, the person who's done it. You know, in a way, if you sort of put people's artwork up, you can have a sense of who that person is and what I've got to know about each of you. And I just loved watching these pieces emerge.
This is going to have to be hung from the ceiling, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, it's a 360-degree piece, this, definitely. How much charcoal there is on my fingers.
Yeah, exactly.
Plates. What did you? Brilliant.
I think it's not working.